And I'm joined by Mr. Cormac Neeson. Great to see you again, Cormac. How's it going?
Hey man, all good. Good to be here again.
I get this catch up with you, man. Obviously, previously chatting about White Feather and the answer and everything, but this time around, you guys, being California Irish, have just released the beautiful, it's a great album. The Mountains Are My Friends. There's a lot of press and thing in the moment about AI and it being great and it's all going to, you know, abolish all musicians. For me, this album is proof that that is bollocks and that AI can't imitate soul, it can't imitate heart, and it can't imitate human feel. And this album oozes that for me.
Yeah, I mean it was in my mind, and I think I even managed to kind of shoehorn it into the initial press release for this record that it very much is a kind of statement that flies in the face of a lot of what's going on with music at the minute, But even like before the robots were writing songs, there was still a big argument for like, just advancements in recording techniques kind of stifling a lot of the magic that happens in the
Yeah,
room whenever people are being imperfect and making mistakes and singing wrong notes. And sometimes, some of those happy accidents are what makes the music great. Like you hear it on all those amazing records, right from like the Beatles through Zeppelin into whoever, you can clearly hear where the singer thinks something's happening and it isn't, but they kind of they work with it and something even cooler happens in the
there's a
moment, and I love those moments, and it's kind of like you don't like I've never been aware of what it was that like that underlying thing that you just love about those records, and it's exactly that. It's the fact that there is no auto tune, there's no um kind of drop-ins, there's no reliance on, oh well, if I don't get it right in this moment, I'll be able to fix it with 20 more attempts at it in post-production, and like I'm saying that, like, I absolutely have been as guilty as the next person to fall into that trap at times, recording an album because you want it to be perfect. You want it to be everything you kind of heard in your head whenever the song was being written, whenever the band, with the answer,
yeah.
like some of the greatest moments we've ever had, you're never gonna hear because because like you try and kind of recapture that moment in the practice room or on the demo, and by trying to get as close to it as you can, you actually lose something. So with this record, with The Mountains Are My Friends, that there was no such issue because what you hear in that record is what was happening in the room when seven musicians were playing, looking each other in the eye and having fun and just loving life in that moment in time, and you can feel all that warmth, and you can hear the creaks and the floorboards at the ends, the takes, and you can hear where Simon and Keys forgot to turn the Leslie off, and it takes him a bar and a half to realize that that's happened, and it cuts out, and all of a sudden there's something else happens. Um, so like I love that, and I mean, I'm absolutely going to try and convince the answer that that's the way to go in the future. I doubt that I'll have much luck with that, but it was a fantastic way to make music. It also meant like the really delicate parts are just ultra delicate and
Mm.
special, but
Kind of
also,
more fragile in some ways.
yeah, but also like there's moments in that on the record whenever it's really heavy, and all it is the bleed happening across the amps
Oh, okay.
and the drums, and like my lead vocal is the live vocal that was happening in those moments. So there's all this extra weight that happens as a result of the analog process as well, which worked really well for the big moments in the record as well as the really quiet, delicate parts.
Yeah. I mean, when you were writing these songs, and obviously you wrote songs that were going down a certain direction and everything else, did you realize kind of how stripped back you were going to go in the terms of the way that they were recorded, the way that the process happened that way, all? was that something just came about once you got to the studio?
No, I had a very clear vision once I kind of um once I realized that the collection of songs that I was putting together was very much inspired by the Laurel Canyon vibes of the late 60s. Um, I kind of knew the sound that I wanted, and I knew the process that I wanted to capture that sound. Um, and like the sound itself was as fate would have it, kind of laid out on a plate. Because of a Neil Young theatre production that I was involved in, called Reharvest, where Donal, one of the guitarists and
Yeah.
vocalists in California Irish, he put this together a couple of years back, and it was a big kind of, it was bigger than California Irish. It was like 12 musicians on the stage, and but the vocal blend is like a lot of the musicians are the guys that are now California Irish,
Oh, okay.
because I like the lap steel and the four part vocals, and again that kind of balance between the delicate and the heavy sides of the record, that was played out over the course of the Reharvest production, so
Oh, nice.
like that was another kind of a very influential factor in the process, the analog process that I wanted to run with, because I knew that these guys could do it.
Mm,
I knew that they're kind of real in Belfast, and in the music scene, they're like they're those guys are top of the pile,
yeah.
and so I knew that I had the right players and the right sound and the right songs. So it was just a matter of then like rehearsing. We rehearsed every other week from the turn of last year right through to recording the record in May, so
Okay.
like I knew that would be key as well, like really ironing out the creases in the rehearsal room, and making sure that it felt amazing
Yeah.
whenever we were just playing in a rehearsal room in an old mill in East Belfast every other week. If we could make it happen there, then bringing it into a lovely studio with nice microphones and a great producer, it was always going to work in my mind. Well, I say that there was still a level of quite intense uncertainty before we did that first song, the first take of the first song, and then I realized that it was all going to work.
I think everyone gets that moment of uncertainty when they're writing or putting a new project together, man. I think you'd be not human if you didn't have that nerves. But then that feels into the vibe, and that goes back to that organic side of things that we've been talking about with this record, I suppose.
Yeah, it did, and you can hear seven players that are really trying very hard to make it all work as well. You like those great blues guitarists where you can really like from the Delta guys right through to like the Peter Greens and the Eric Claptons of this world. Like their greatest work is whenever they are just digging in and playing for their lives. Like it never got better than Eric Clapton's Blues Breakers album for me.
No,
It
yeah,
never got more, for as far as Eric Clapton's concerned. Obviously he went on and did loads of great stuff, but like that attack, in Olympic Studios, whenever he's just turned all the amps up loud and he's just going for it, that's the West. This is not a blues record. It's a similar approach. It's everybody just digging in and really having a great time.
yeah. There is a kind of like you say a different vibe and an energy about when the artist is still hungry, for want of a better term. They want to prove a point. They believe, and maybe it's a new project or maybe it's just a fresh band altogether. But there's definitely always a magic, I feel like you say, in those moments when it is seen. You were talking about before about the recording process. That I'm guessing with how you record this album, there wasn't too many overdubs. I bet you physically can do too many overdubs. Could you with the equipment that you had?
No, so that was the thing. Like the producer Pete Miles, uh, whose studio, uh, Metal Farm
Yeah.
is in Devon. Um, the answer had worked. We did Sundowners in that same studio, and
Okay.
so I knew that Pete was a real master with the tape machine,
Yeah.
and I approached him. I think we were in doing a couple of singles then after we'd done the record, and I knew that it was coming to a point whenever the answer were going to kind of fade into the background and start writing the next record. So it was time for California Irish to lean forward, and I said to him, I explained, I've got these songs, Laurel Canyon influence. I want to go in and do it exactly as Neil Young would have done it when he was recording Harvest. And Pete was like, his face just lit up. He's like, yes, 100%, let's do it. And I was like, with money, I'm waiting on a bit of funding coming through, and he's like, whatever you've got, I'll take it and we'll do it. And that was amazing as well, just to have that level of commitment from the start. But also he was a real hard ass in terms of adhering exactly to the process as you would have done. It was actually technically the 1969 moving into 1970, because I think it moved from like 8-track to 16-track at that point or something. But we had 16 channels to work with, and bear in mind that with a 7-piece band, I think 13 or 14 of those channels were accounted for. Even though we only had like 3 microphones in the drums, which I thought was completely mental, but it worked.
It's surprising how big the drum sound is on this and how well it cuts with just 3 mics.
I know it's crazy, but then that was the way Zeppelin would have done it as well,
I suppose so, yeah.
And like, is there a bigger drum sound in the history of rock?
Probably not.
So like, yeah. So what it meant then, the process, every song was do a take, get the Pete coming through in her ears every time, going, okay, that was good, but I think you're just finding your feet. We did another take, and he's like, yeah, that was fantastic. We do one for luck, and we did the third take, and more often than not, it was that second take. And you just took that entire take,
yeah,
kind of warts and all. If somebody had a bum note that you could get away with, we just went with it. We rather than doing another take and losing some of that initial magic. And then we had, like I say, 2 channels to work with. So maybe the first thing we would do is we'd go in and do 4 vocals around 1 mic for all the big vocal moments. And then we double track those vocals, so you had this huge vocal sound. And if we forgot to put like a shaker in or something, somebody would have to stand just behind the vocals with the shaker on the same mic to get the shaker in. If there were hand claps, Pete was like, right, anybody who's not doing anything during this take, clap your hands. That's where we're going to get the hand claps from. So it was really, you have to get really kind of creative with being as efficient as possible. But again, it meant that it really limited your options in the best possible way. You had to get it in the room with that live take, and then the vocals and a shaker, or the vocals and a xylophone was just additional gravy.
That must have been a lot of fun though, when you haven't got that, you haven't got that opportunity to, like you say, go and do a shed load of overdubs, and you can't build it up in like for what we would consider a more straightforward route these days. But that must have been a lot more fun to try and do it, like you say.
Oh, it was hilarious. Like, a lot of the time you really had to, once you caught someone's eye, and you might be like playing a cowbell or something, and you caught someone's eye, like the biggest challenge was not to laugh, because that would have destroyed the take, even though the record itself ends in laughter.
I was going to say that was at the end of I Feel Free, yeah.
If you let I Am Free run, there's this hum that we just let, like, everybody's kind of, don't stand on a creaky floorboard, don't breathe. And then just the release, whenever Pete gives you that, okay, you're clear, everybody just burst out laughing, and we decided to keep that on the end of the record.
I mean, I think what I liked about Where I Called Immediately, I mean, you sort of literally in the first 2 songs, you got Old Friends being track 2, which is a great song. But I love the juxtaposition between Live Fast Die Free being opening track, which is obviously quite a more groovy orientated kind of song to open up with. Then you go into Old Friends, which is just it's a lot more chilled. It's a lot more, and immediately in those first 2 songs, you're already showing the kind of level of texture that's going to be on this album within the first 2 tracks.
That was, I'm glad to hear you say that, because that was entirely intentional. Like, I think whenever Pete was asking for the running order again, that was something that needed called in the 5 days that we were there, you know. So whenever I said I wanted Old Friends second, he was like, kind of looked at me going, really? He said, why? He's like, because I want people to realize that this is not just a rock record,
Yeah.
you know. Um, and it really is not. There's moments where we rock, but there's moments like on Old Friends where it gets very I don't know, like deep and delicate, you know. And I wanted to hit people up with that at the earliest possible moment, so that they realize, you know, people are, if they listen beyond the first track, touch wood, they realize that there's a lot more to the album. So
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some clips that sort of circulated. I've not got a chance to catch you guys live yet because you know a couple of shows, but saw some stuff live. It looked like Susie had some weird and wonderful instruments with her. And there's some clips I've seen in live. Do they any of those make it into this year? Or are they just fun for fun live?
yeah, so I mean, there's lots of really cool stuff on the record, and then Susie, always up for a challenge, then went and raided her suitcase full of weird and wonderful instruments, and kind of recreates some of that sonic in the live show. But yeah, I mean, on Old Friends, for example, there's a kalimba, a little like wooden thumb
I like
harp.
the thumb harp thing, yeah.
Yeah, and that is actually my son's, and it was grabbed as I was literally saying goodbye to my family, heading out the door to jump in a car with Donal and the band to head to the airport. And I had been kind of uh, fretting a little bit over the fact that on a couple of the demos that I demoed the songs digitally. You know, I just sat here where I'm sitting now, and did a lot of stuff just with a Logic kind of keyboard. You know, just different sounds. Like there's a mellotron on the demo, and we didn't have a mellotron, so on something different, Susie and I play a recorder duet. There's a xylophone on Old Friends, and I tried to get a xylophone delivered to the studio, and it
Okay.
landed at my door the day before here in Belfast. I got it in the confusion and the, you know, there must have been 101 things going on in my head. I must have given my Belfast address for the delivery of the xylophone. So it's like, oh no, what am I going to do? And it just came to me on the way out the door. It's like, Davo, we're borrowing your thumb harp, you know. And he actually gave out as I was leaving. He's like, that's my harp, that's my thumb harp, you know. Even though he never uses it, and he hasn't used it since, but he saw me, you know, go to take it, and he all of a sudden he wanted it. But so that features very prominently on Old Friends,
Yeah.
as a
Wondered
whole
what that
other
was. I didn't
little
realize it was the kalimba.
little hook thing. And that's another example. Like, if any of your listeners are in any way intrigued by that, when you listen to Old Friends, and after the vocal happens, you hear this little kind of two note vocal thing on the thumb harp. But the first time you hear it, it's really quiet, and it's because Susie wasn't holding it close enough to the mic, and it's only that she got the nod from me or Pete to go, like, hold it up closer to the mic, that it goes closer, and then it's at the level that you ideally would want it. But I love the fact that it kind of naturally fades into the song because of that, you know. So again, that analog process is helping to really kind of inform the sound in the record, combined with lots of weird and wonderful little kind of ways we try to recreate the sounds from the demos in an analog acoustic setting, you know. And again, it's a better record for it.
Absolutely, man. You mentioned something different there, which is one of my favorite tracks on the album itself. But where did that come from in terms of writing, etc.?
I wrote it with a couple of friends, again sitting here one afternoon, and we kind of wrote it just with no like a lot of the songs, they weren't, it wasn't like I sat down and was like, I need to write an album that is Laurel Canyon inspired, and we're gonna do it on analog and all the rest of it. You know, it, it was more once the songs were all written over a space of time, over a space of about 2 years, I realized that I had this collection that were in a similar vein, weirdly, even though they weren't like written in the same week or anything, or even the same location a lot of the time. But um, yeah, just I think a friend of mine, Arthur's, just started playing that little kind of plucky guitar part
Mm.
that appears in the record. I think on the album it starts in the piano and then it moves to the guitar, but um, it just sparked in me. It sounded like something off a Crosby, Stills and Nash record for me, and particularly one of the ones that like Crosby or Nash would have written. Um, and yeah, I just intentionally wanted to kind of keep the lyrics really kind of visual and trippy and suggestive rather than having this kind of very set introspective narrative running through it. So it all kind of feeds into the feel of the song, the lyric and the music and the
Yeah,
way it's recorded all blend together nicely, I think.
it does. I mean, the whole album just feels like the perfect kind of, I don't know. I'd want to see that sun setting in, outdoors somewhere, you know what I mean? It's kind of got that kind of summer vibe of that. Just at that magical moment when sun's setting and you outdoors somewhere to as an outdoor gig, it just seems to be right for that kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean that is the plan. We're going to work this now right through the year, and hopefully um by the time the festival season next year comes around, we should be um filling as many of those sunsetting main stage slots as possible would be the plan. But like even yeah, with something different, like that's the only one we shot a kind of official video for, and um we went up into the Wicklow Mountains, and I just gave the director the brief that I wanted it to be like an Irish mountainous version of the acid trip scene in the movie Easy Rider. It happens in the
Okay.
graveyard in New Orleans. And the director just loved this reference, and then like he
Went with it.
he was locked into the stuff that we were trying to achieve then, and it ended up being a really fun day. But the video itself again is equally kind of abstract and trippy as the song itself. So it's all
Yeah, it does feed into each other nicely, doesn't it?
everything just complements each other in the record, I think, nicely.
Nice. We're talking about like wanting to see it live, mate. And have you got any plans for shows the remainder of this year?
We've got the next one we're doing is a festival in Ireland and the North of Ireland here actually, and that's in the first weekend of September, and then we've another Belfast kind of showcase gig happening in the end of September, October time, um, and then we're busy kind of we just acquired management there recently, so we're busy kind of getting our heads together in terms of kind of getting the right strategy for gigs because we're 7 piece band, so it's not like I can just throw the guitar in the car
Yeah.
and head off. It takes a little bit of organizing, but like I do feel that the the live show does the sound of the record justice, but also gives the songs a whole kind of extra energy to it. That
Yeah.
that works really well. We've done 3 gigs so far. We've done like a kind of secret invite only show that was it ended up there was like 300 plus people turned up, and it was a bit crazy. And then um we did our kind of headline Belfast show in a really famous venue, the Empire Music Hall.
Yeah.
Again, it was fantastic. And then we did our first festival a couple of weeks ago, and again, like that was an 11 o'clock on a Friday night festival slot, and it worked great in that scenario as well. So I feel like we're we're a proper live band now, and I'd be really keen to take that aspect of what it is and get it out to as many eyes and ears as possible.
Yeah. But man, is that your kind of focus with it now, just to keep pushing the live thing over the next sort of year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and creatively, like the answer have started really kind of turning up the heat in terms of the next answer record. So from a songwriting point of view, I'm kind of in the background with the answer from a front-facing point of view for the next, 10, 11, 12 months.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, there's going to be some answer stuff, but I'm very much going to put as much energy as possible into really trying to establish the new band that is California Irish, and hopefully set us up nicely for the next one, whenever that may be.
Yeah, and this is going to, I take it this is something that you're going to want to, continue and run alongside the answer and just keep it going.
Absolutely, and I think kind of it's kind of like what my solo project was with White Feather,
Mm.
to the answer in that it's a whole other outlet, it's a
Yeah.
whole other vibe, and um it's kind of it's less intense than the answer. The answer, like the sound, and because we've been together for so long and 7 records, and there's an intensity that works for the band, but
Mm.
it feeds into our sound, feeds into the way we kind of keep our discipline in terms of kind of working as hard as we can and that stuff. But um the California Air stuff, like I'm working as hard as I've ever worked on a project, but it doesn't feel like work at all. It's a real joy to to make music with the other 6 guys, and um the songs themselves mean an awful lot to me. They're it's a California Irish album, but I feel like there's an awful lot of who I am in the songs.
Mm.
Um, and it's weird actually, because I did this kind of very intimate singer-songwriter gig that happens in a town called Bangor, just up the road from Belfast. There's a lovely venue, and the guy that runs it is a really kind of renowned singer-songwriter, and it's a proper sit down listening crowd, like kind of pin drop stuff. So I played on Saturday night there, and I did a bunch of stuff. Did a couple of answer songs. I did um good kind of 4 or 5 songs from White Feather, and then did another 4 or 5 from California Irish. And it was crazy how um, my whole headspace felt different jumping from the White Feather stuff into the California Irish stuff. And in a like I don't know, it's hard to describe. Like with White Feather, like every time I sing those songs, I can feel a bit of like the kind of there's a lot of like they were quite intense, stressful times that
Mm.
that give rise to the songs that appear in White Feather. And there's a lot of kind of healing happened over the course of that time. So it's a very emotional kind of experience playing any of those songs, and I always feel that, and I kind of
Yeah.
you know the way somebody feels whenever they're recounting a difficult moment in their lives. But with California Irish, it's equally emotional, but it's a much more kind of like um kind of carefree, joyous
Yeah. It doesn't come
feel
from
to
a
it, you
sort of
know.
struggle time rather than like rough.
Yeah, and it kind of again, like I can feel where those songs came from, the period of my life where those songs came from, and it's a lovely progression,
Yeah.
moving from dealing with stuff and the healing and the kind of the therapy that those songs in White Feather brought me, to being able to just kind of look up and embrace the universe a bit more. And I can feel that energy kind of threads through the California Irish stuff in a way that's really kind of it's I really appreciate it on a personal level, being able to do that. So
Did you ever consider these songs coming out as just a solo record then, or was it always when you started playing it that it just made sense to do it with everyone else?
no, very very much so. In fact, I only told the band on the last night of the recording of the record that I wanted us to be a band.
Nice.
They all thought they were coming in to do my next solo album.
Okay.
And I did too, up to a point. And then I kind of, the more we rehearsed and the more we got ready, the more in my head I was thinking, actually, this needs to be a band. And then the studio experience just cemented that. And yeah, we were all drinking beers and wine and listening to what we'd done like 10 or 11 times on the last night. And I said, kind of one by one, or at least in small groups. It's like, this is what I want to do. I want to call the record "The Mountains Are My Friends." I want to call the band California Irish, and I want us to move forward as a band.
Nice. I mean, when you were recording it, and obviously they were under the got premise and thought process of, right, this is going to be, Cormac's solo record. When you were going through that, and then, I mean, I guess when you heard the album, was it when you heard the album when it started to form the songs a bit more, or was it just like the process of working with these people a bit more and getting to know them a bit more, I guess, on a personal front that changed the album?
It was a bit of both. I knew the songs can't be fully kind of realized without the sound and the
Mm.
musicianship that those guys bring into the room.
Yeah.
But also there's a bunch of members of this band that are old friends of mine. Like
Mm.
Donal, I've known since we were really small kids, like preschool kids. Like I used to go and stay in their house whenever I was like 5 and 6. Um, his brother Connor would have been one of my best friends for my whole childhood. And like everybody else in the band, I've known on the music scene for years and years. So there's already this lovely
Yeah,
kind of
that was right.
chemistry
Yeah.
amongst the band as friends getting in to play music together. But there's just something happening that in the studio, like people, like every one of us couldn't quite believe that it was all working as well as it was. Um, and we all found it a very, very kind of powerful, joyous experience. Joy is the word, like, and yeah, I just like that absolutely. The fact that it went so well just cemented, from day one of the studio session. I knew that this is what I wanted it to be then.
Nice one, man. I mean, Cormac, it's great to catch up with you, man. This is an absolutely gorgeous record. At the beginning of the interview, I'm going to play something different just because it's a personal favorite of mine off the album. But at the end of the interview, what song would you like us to play from the album itself?
Maybe Julianne.
Yeah, go Julianne. That's
Yeah,
got
let's go
great.
with Julianne.
Yeah, it's good change. Remind me a lot of the Birds, that one.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was trying to, trying to go for.
I'm glad we're on the same page.
I'm glad. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for your time, Cormac, man. It's been great to catch up with you, dude. And hopefully I'll see you on the road with this one as well.
Thanks, Lee. Appreciate it, man.
No worries, man. Take care, bud.
Thanks a million. See ya.